Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Kyle, and I'm delighted to be a part of this event today and to welcome you formally to this conversation that is part of a new series, the second edition of a new series of conversations coming out of the Nikolais Legacy Group. If I could ask everybody, our guests, people that are audience visiting, to please mute yourselves and to turn off your video cameras for the next while. That will help us bring focus to our panelists, our esteemed panelists, and to our moderator over the course of the conversation. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a rundown of what to expect this afternoon or this evening or this morning, depending on where you are beaming in from in the world. I want to acknowledge, there's a lot happening in the world right now, and in certain parts of the world in particular. And I just want to acknowledge that we are all here to hopefully uplift those that are struggling right now, and use our energy, our shared energy here, to put some good in the world to help them. I want to thank Trinity College for helping to facilitate this event through Zoom, and the Nikolais Legacy Group in particular for supporting all things Nikolai Lewis. And in order for us to move forward, as I said, please remember to keep your microphones muted and your videos turned off. That will, like I said, help focus the event on our featured guests. Please do feel free to use the chat function throughout the course of the event if you have comments you'd like to drop in or would like to pose questions. Janice Brenner, who is here behind the scenes with me, will be monitoring the chat during the event and will help facilitate questions. We'll do our best to get to your questions at the end of the session. The plan is for this to be about 90 minutes total. So at around 4 o'clock, Robert will wrap up the initial conversation with our panelists, and then we'll transition into the Q&A session. So like I said, please feel free to use the chat function to communicate any questions you might have. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator, Robert Small.
Hello, everyone. The Nikolais Legacy Group welcomes you to today's Reach Out Zoom in a series entitled In the Moment, Conversations on Creative Thinking, Acting, and Being. We are celebrating the evolving legacy of ideas in motion that Alwyn Nikolai and Murray Lewis invited us to investigate. In our ongoing series of informal Zoom conversations, the Nikolais Legacy Group is inviting 7 decades of dancers, choreographers, teachers, students, colleagues, and writers to speak in the moment about how we continue to live with, apply, and advance Nick and Murray's aesthetics and pedagogical theories in our own practices, both inside and outside of dance. And as we look forward, we welcome more recent generations into these conversations as we share our histories, remembered experiences, and stories. My name is Robert Small, and I am a member of the Nikolais Legacy Group, along with Lynn Levine Rico, Marcia Wardell Kelly, Janice Brenner, Peter Kyle, Phyllis Lamhut, Natasha Simon, Trista DeFilippis, Elizabeth Higgins, and Kitty Cunningham. I want to give a big thank you to the artistic director of the Nikolai Lewis Foundation for Dance, Alberto Del Saz, for supporting this series of In the Moment conversations. Thank you, Tito. The first in our series of conversation was titled The Originals and featured Gladys Balin, Phyllis Lamhut, and Coral Martindale, who were there at the very beginning as Alwyn Nikolai evolved and developed his theories of time, space, shape, motion, and energy at the Henry Street Playhouse on the Lower East Side of New York City in the 1950s. But now I want to transition to a decade later and introduce our 3 guests from France, Florida, and California for today's conversation. 3 journeys, and what extraordinary journeys these women have been on since the mid to late 1960s. All 3 studied at the Henry Street Playhouse with Alwyn Nikolais and performed and toured internationally with the Nikolais Dance Theater. After leaving the company, they continued on their own remarkable journeys. And here they are. Carolyn Carlson is in France. Jeanette Stoner is in Florida, and Tandy Beal is in California. Carolyn, ça va bien ce soir?
Très bien, merci.
Bon.
Merci, Robert.
Bon. Jeanette, I see you. Thank you for joining us for the conversation. And Tandy, welcome. It is great to see you there in sunny, I assume, sunny California.
And cold, believe it or not.
Let me start with you, Carolyn. Vous êtes prête?
Oui.
Bon. Carolyn, you began your dance training with ballet classes as you grew up in California. You then went to the University of Utah, where you studied with Joanne Woodbury and Shirley Ryrie. How did you respond to the differences from your early training in ballet to modern dance?
Well, I was in San Francisco Ballet. I mean, I started ballet since I was 7 years old. And then my junior college, I went to San Francisco to study with the Christensen brothers. And great technique, but I couldn't smile and be happy while I was doing an arabesque. I could never understand that. And I remember one day I did a port de bras. Everybody was doing the same thing, plie, and I stopped and I left. I said, this isn't for me. I don't know. It was a code. And I just knew this, you know, I always loved ballet. I love the technique, but I felt this wasn't my calling. And then my dear mother found a university, the University of Utah. And the grace of her, I enrolled in the university, and this is where I met Joanne Woodbury, who changed my thinking, and her classes were amazing. And later on, okay, we'll talk about this later, but then she introduced me to Alwyn Nikolais.
While you were at the university, Joanne suggested that you participate in a 2-week summer course with Alwyn Nikolais. Is that right, that she suggested that?
Yes, in Park City.
And what did you think of this man, Alwyn Nikolais, when you first came into contact with him and his approach to motion at that summer course?
I was free. I was free with his technique. I mean, talking about time, space, shape, and motion, how he evolved. I could forget my face. I could forget my ego. And finally, I found a place where I could be comfortable in the work. Of course, Joanne Woodbury, with Joanne, we had great classes involved in this. But the first time I met Nikolais, very impressive gentleman, kind, white-haired. He never changed for me. And I was impressed because he never demonstrated. He talked in words. And the words were just amazing to me. And he put something in my mind and in my heart that I could really work with, the tools.
And Jeanette, you danced as a child in Hartford, Connecticut with Truda Kashman and came to New York to study at the Martha Graham studio. How old were you when you came to New York City? And tell us about your experiences at the Graham studio.
Well, actually, well, first of all, I took for a couple of years from Nikolai's dance partner, Truda Kashman. Isn't that something? He lived in Hartford or outside of Hartford, but I loved Graham. I love the technique. For my long back, it was fantastic. And yet after about, I don't know, a year and a half, I thought, I'm never going to find my own voice. I'm never going to find my own way of doing things. And I thought that I would, and also I saw somebody improvise a demonstration, and I thought, that's it. And so I heard about Nikolai, about the Henry Street Playhouse. I didn't hear about Nikolai, and that I knew that they had composition and improvisation. And so I said, well, I'll try it. Then I went to a performance. And I mean, here I am with the Martha Graham technique in my mind. And here are these characters that were quirky. I mean, in a whole other world. And I went, this is what I'm going to go and be in. I mean, it was unbelievable. But I said, well, let me try it. And then I was there forever, you know, I mean, so.
What was your reaction to Nick as the, you know, the man in the image of him? How?
Well, you know, I thought of him, oh, this man comes from Hartford, you know, I wasn't, the person for me was more Murray. He was like, helped me so much we had a great class the first year. And I didn't know much about Nick for a while when I was there. You know, we had our own little class and sometimes he would come and teach. And I had a lot of trouble with just the talking. I sort of needed demonstration. It was the opposite for me. So, and then when I got to know him, of course, it was fascinating, but I didn't get to know him that well, but I thought he was fascinating.
Tandy, tell us about your early exposure to dance and how at the age of 14, you met Nick. What was your impression of him at such an early age?
Well, I entered not because of the school, I entered because I saw his work. And I was lucky as a child because I saw tons of theater and dance because my parents were both professional actors and we lived right around the corner from city center. But when I was 14, I turned it around and brought them down to the Playhouse to see Imago. And, you know, we had no idea what we were going to. And in the foyer, my parents bumped into Gower and Marge Champion. And my father said, well, what do you know about this guy, Nikolai? And they said, oh, everybody on Broadway comes down to filch his ideas because he's always at the cutting edge. But, you know, we walked into the theater and I had no idea what was going to happen, but my life changed from there on in. It was, you know, I was so brought into the wonderment of the world that he created. And I had lived in my imagination pretty thoroughly until that time. And suddenly at age 14, I saw, wow, here's somebody who is living so fully in his imagination and he's an adult. So it's possible to live a life. And I found it quite extraordinary. I was so excited about it that I grabbed my new boyfriend, John Scoville, and said, you have to come see this next weekend. And he had the same astonishment because he was a bluegrass musician in country music, and hearing Nick changed his life as well. And he became a composer for dance and for choreographers, John Scoville. And actually, in this spiral of beginnings and endings, Nick asked John to make a score for him that turned out to be Nick's last work called Aurora Dawn. I kind of loved that. Yeah.
When did you come to the Playhouse after seeing that performance?
Well, I was a junior in high school then, and so I got to my senior year, and I knew I didn't want to go to college right away. I thought I'd take a year out, and it turned into the rest of my life. But so I enrolled in Tuesday, Thursdays, that you could do that at that time. And my first class, it's still so in my mind. It was a Thursday morning, 10 o'clock. Jeanette was in that class. Our first improv was body parts, and Murray's playing was so extraordinary. And then I went back to Betty Young and said, okay, I know I'm enrolled 2 days a week, 5 days, please. But I had no goal of this was going to be my life. I had no goal that I was going to follow that route. I kind of thought theater would be my route.
Nick's company, the Nikolai Dance Theater, was bursting onto the international dance scene in the mid-1960s, and you all were part of his visionary and multimedia approach to dance that placed you in the spotlight. Tandy, what years did you dance with the company?
70 and 71.
Jeanette, when were you in the company?
I don't know. Just before that, I think.
Yeah, I wore your costumes.
Yeah.
And Carolyn, how about you? How long did you dance with the company?
7 years,
Wow.
1965 to 71.
Wow.
And I would like to say the same thing that Tandy says. Nick changed my life. When he spoke and we improvisations and all his theories, I knew in my mind, I already saw it happening. I saw my life before me. He gave me this calling. And I will also use the same word as Tandy. It was astonishing what he proposed. And it was so amazing to me. Because, in the years of the 60s, I was studying Zen Buddhism, and I was sold on Allen Ginsberg, Alan Watts. So I was also into poetry. But the things I learned outside of Nikolai were everything was together. And Nikolai was so, I think, advanced in his thinking, that things I had never heard before. And
so you all were right there in the middle of this frenzied world of dance and theater in the 1960s.
it was the hippie generation.
Yeah, what a time.
Where everything was free, anything goes.
That's right.
And I liked what Carl and Phyllis said, Gladys, we were on Canal Street. For many improvisations, I don't know how many things we picked up on Canal Street. So generations still went on. Yeah.
And the tours that you were on were at times many months long. I mean, the company was often sponsored by the United States Information Agency. So you performed for kings and queens, for diplomats and heads of state, in huge opera houses and on outdoor stages. So Carolyn, what was your reaction to all the hubbub, all this success and notoriety?
I was happy for Nick, I must say. I mean, I followed him so faithfully, and when hearing the applause and I so believed in his work, I knew something was happening. And I would like to tell one story about Nick, if I could. You asked me my memories. Yeah. The first time I was with Nick, I can't remember, I think Phyllis remembered, it was in Wisconsin or Michigan. It was the debut of the trio, with arms circled over the head and the big hoop. It was my first performance with Alwyn Nikolai with this hoop. I was nervous as hell. And here I go, coming along with this dress. After 1 minute, I fell on the floor. My foot caught in the hoop. And I stood up like a flash. I don't think I've ever stood up so fast in my life. And I carried on with tears in my eyes. And afterwards, I came to Nick and I said, Nick, I'm so sorry. I fell down. And Nick said, I didn't see anything. Oh, gosh.
Well, tagging on that, I was thinking about dancing that same thing in Carlson ruins. And the thousands of people outside, you're so struck by the ancientness that you are surrounded by. And we're doing what we call the girls trio.
Right.
And you're on one leg, taking an attitude back, and you start this arch to look up into the sky. And suddenly there's a comet that just streaked across the sky. And I think all three of us just, we completely stopped where we were. It was just a beautiful moment. And it was older than the ruins.
I would like to say one more thing about not a comet in the sky, the moon.
Yes, that was
in 1969, We were in the Baalbek Festival,
Mm.
performing in the most antique theater in the world. And there was a full moon up ahead. And they before the performance, they said, the men have just landed on the moon. And we were in the Baalbek Festival.
And the tent went off. Remember that? The tent went
Yes.
wild and we were trying to catch it and it was,
I
it
remember.
was
This
so
was
thrilling. Oh,
incredible.
yeah.
In Nick's work tent, Phyllis has said that the wind came up, and this was in an outdoor amphitheater.
Right.
And Jim Van Abem can tell you that he lost control of this
Right.
huge piece of fabric, and you just went on and on and on.
It was so wild. We were all wild. You know, it was so thrilling. And the bats overhead, bats flying around.
Jeanette, how did you deal with the rigors of training, of touring? I'm sorry. You know,
Well,
did
it was
you
hard
take-
for me.
it was hard for you in what way?
Well, first, I just, I had to go in because somebody had to go out and I just did a performance. I learned it and performed it that night kind of thing. And it, yeah. And then I went on tour quickly after that without really any preparation, you know, I don't know. It was 3 months of American tour and then 3 months of European tour. And it was hard for me and my feet. Yeah.
Right.
After performing and touring with the company, you three distinctly individual, beautiful and creative artists continued your journeys. And those years with Nick were just the beginning of what was to come. But I want to turn back for just a few minutes to ask again about those formative years, because those of us that came in the 70s, Marsha Wardell Kelly was from Traverse City, Michigan, and came via the University of Michigan. I was from Moline, Illinois, the home of John Deere tractors, and came via UCLA. But we were in our very early 20s. And just as you had said, can you tell us a little bit more about what we were filled with when we came to dance with these men?
I feel like the deepest gift that Nick and all of you wonderful teachers, Joanne, Gladys, Phyllis, all of you gave was an understanding of presence. And I'm not sure how it was done because it was kind of alchemical, but there was something about the learning of how to connect cell to cell, of limb to torso, of the being to the space around you. And somehow this training goes beyond becoming a dancer. It was huge for our art, but it also is an amazing expression of how to live our lives, to keep that connectivity, the subtlety, and seeing how everything is all connected. And somehow, I think through the improvisational parts, that's where we really had to keep our immediacy happening. And, you know, there's just so much joy in the improvisation and fun. When we did One of the Horse's Mouths, I remember celebrating either Nick or Murray. I remember one of the people who was running it said to me, wow, we've done a lot of these and never have we seen a group of people have so much fun together. Mm. And immediately I went, oh yeah, it's the improvisation that they all schooled us in how to play. And to find this sense of, I'm going to go back to the sense of wonder in that moment.
In addition to that, I think we all learned, and you have all, our teachers, we learned communication skills. We learned a language that I think is missing in a lot of training nowadays. How do you impart ideas to your students? How do you encourage them to find their own way within all of this? And I just think it's a testament to both Nick, Murray, and Phyllis, and Gladys, and all of those out there who are teaching, that you have this wealth of information to communicate, to keep this legacy of ideas going. I'm going to move on to,
No, but Rob, I have one thing to say.
please join in.
I have been teaching generations of dancers in Europe. And it's always amazing to me when it comes to the basic principles of Nick, they're absolutely floored. They've never heard this. You know, now it's because of the internet, it's a lot of imitation and everybody, there's no masters anymore. I mean, there's very few. They learn dance, one person, and then they do their own work. But through teaching, it's amazing to still see this glimmer in the eyes. And as Tandy said, through improvisation, I mean, I found my own work through improvisation. And when I see the dancers, I mean, they're so happy to know that they can find their own ways of expressing themselves through the principles. And this is also the gift of Nikolai, working with these tools. It never fails. It works with, I have taught hundreds, thousands by this time. I'm a grandmother in France, and it never fails. I always see the delight and the interest of the people here. It's amazing.
I think that what you're saying about the abstraction allowed us all to be who we were. And so I think the extraordinary thing is that we didn't come out cookie cutters. I mean, I think there were tendencies that were encouraged in us, but that we would all find our very unique paths. And I know I was in class with Jeanette in our very first year together, and I wrote her a note because this has brought back a cascade of memories of just, it wasn't about competition. It was, oh my God, you could do it that way. Oh, and then you go down a new path, and there was this explosion of appetite. Because through the tools, the abstract tools, it wasn't about personality. It wasn't about do me. It wasn't about follow me. It was how do you listen to what this is and find its own reality. It was an extraordinary gift.
But that's what, for me, it was a collective curiosity.
Nice.
There was no ego involved, and everybody was for everyone else. And this was a great time. And,
Jeanette?
It's sort of like we got a structure underneath us for whatever we wanted to do, like a skeleton, and then we built on top of it, but a very strong, usable and wonderful thing. Yeah.
In some ways, the teaching was granular. I mean, the fact that the way you approach space, I feel like when I've seen many teachers try to work with space, if they didn't come from this tradition, it's fairly shallow. I made a big judgment there, but with this tradition, it was about inner space, about outer space, about the space between your fingers, between each other, about this glorious entity that's around us. So it was very, very specific in the structure that Jeanette's talking about.
and also the true gift of Nikolai. Look at all of us. We all have the same base, and we all went in different directions. I mean, that is a gift of Nikolai. There was no imitation.
You know, here's a story that I think probably all of us here who are on the line could connect to. I'd been studying there for about 2 or 3 years, and I was at some party with my parents. I was probably 18, and Nick and Murray were there, and somebody introduced my mother and said, Helen, she's Tandy's mother. And Murray went, no, she's not. I'm Tandy's mother. And it's true, our aesthetic DNA, we all have this amazing family relationship through what they taught us.
And Murray's right behind me, bathed in Nikolai's light. But Alwyn Nikolai was certainly a master of his multimedia approach to choreography. He created the lighting environments, composed the music, made slides for projections, created theatrical settings, and designed the costumes. But we must acknowledge the very important contributions that you made to the choreography through hours and hours of improvisation that he directed on the stage. How did you respond to his improvisational approach when he was creating his work?
I would like to, it was the time of my life. We had the stage. Nikolai would be sitting out there and he would tell us to improvise. And I was home. I mean, I loved to work for him. And he especially liked my shapes. I think Tandy too, and Jeanette with our long bodies. And what amazed me, he would look at the choreography where there was no big videos in then. And he would go home and he had this Moog synthesizer, which is one of the first ones. And he would go home and he would make music, the tape, and he would come back the next day and play the music. And so we would refine the improvisation. And for me, it was the most incredible adventure because it wasn't counting. Murray counted more than Nick. Nick, to my opinion, he didn't count very much. We listened to bong, beep, move. So we always looked forward to the next day when I was on stage to what he was going to bring, to what beep or bong we could move to. Yeah.
Tandy, how did you like spending hours and hours in the dark while he set the lights?
I don't know. We had there was a family relationship while you were on stage. If you kept it quiet enough, he wouldn't get mad. And
Andy, that was another thing. Nikolai said, "Shut up, everybody," while we waited for his lights. Okay.
But if you could just stay in that place of, it nurtured that familial sense of being on stage and that. Now I realize, having made my own shows a lot, that you realize, oh my God, would they just stay focused on stage while I'm trying to see this difference? But yeah. I mean, his work was so much about detail. And it's interesting because he would do a broad paint, first of all, and then knock it back into the detail that's going. You mentioned about being from the Midwest. And I remember once in one of our comp classes on stage and in the dark in the theater, somebody had just arrived from the Midwest and said, Mr. Nikolai, could you please tell us the meaning of art?
Oh boy.
And Nick choked on his coffee, took a pause, took a bite of his sandwich, took another drink of his coffee, and he said, well, all I can tell you is it's all about detail. It's about detail. That's it. Next person. Come on, let's go. Yeah.
Now, Nick and Murray had very different approaches. I only danced with Mary Lewis, and Phyllis has said this, that she loved dancing for Murray because he gave us all the steps. But there was a lot of room in Nick's work. Am I right that there was
Yeah, I know the only work that I made with him was called Scenario, which I think only was done that year. And it was all, Nick was interested in how to get at emotionality, the essence of emotion. And we would spend days on anger, grief, laughter. And I know I started the grief sorrow section. God, you'd just be wiped out by the end of each day. But it was an extraordinary experience to have somebody very calmly leading you down this path, that path, this path. And you could explore, because he would say, no, not there, here. And there's something very freeing about that. Oh, I could do anything. And he's going to corral where the interest is.
This was Murray or Nick?
Nick.
Ah.
Yeah. How about you, Jeanette? In the making of things, in the improvisational state?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm like the odd man out. I felt that I didn't enjoy improvising under the conditions as much as you all did. I mean, I felt constricted and that I had to be in a certain place at a certain time. But I mean, it was it was thrilling to be in it and to see what came out from what you were working on.
Mhm.
Let me move on to we'd like to see a few minutes of Carolyn, one of your works, The Tree, Fragments of Poetics on Fire. So Peter, can we look at that excerpt? Wow.
Yeah.
Carolyn, could you tell us a little bit about how you collaborate with your colleagues to put the elements of light, sound, costume, set design, and movement together?
I'm like Nikolai. The music is original. Actually, it's by my son, who is a composer.
Oh my
This
God.
particular piece, yeah. And I always have original lights, and I find music, and I'm very concerned. I did the costumes, and I always have someone for the decor. And also, this was during the pandemic. So you see the people gathering at the end, and we have trees and wind and fire. So I must say, I worked 1 year at home with the crew, lights, music, etc., before I saw the company. We were on Zoom. I mean, how we did this piece, like probably all of you, was a miracle. We worked on Zoom. I'm not a technological person, but yeah.
Great.
I follow Nikolai. Most of my works are original. I think like Tandy, who works with her husband, John. And I don't know about you, Jeanette, but most of my music is original for each piece.
Jeanette, I understand that you had a decades-long collaboration with some of your dancers in New York City. One of those wonderful dancers is Chase Booth. And we want to show a short video of a solo work danced by Chase entitled Wheel. And we will look at that first and then ask you about what inspired you and how you collaborated with him to make the work. Here is the Wheel. Jeanette, tell us how you collaborated with Chase on that.
Well, you can see that most of that was him. I mean, I couldn't even do most of those things. But he improvised and we worked with that. And we worked over a long period of time. But I worked with him for like 30 years, not 10. A
Wow.
lot of the company too, the same people. But I mean, Chase is an incredible person to work with, just brilliant. Yeah.
Because I remember coming to the studio to see your concerts and someone climbing up a ladder up into the water pipe, the sprinkler system, and it just was.
That was him hanging from the
Oh,
pipe.
okay.
I'm upside down for like at least 20 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then a ladder hanging from the pipe too. And
Yes, just a wonderful sense of space and time and shape. Just wonderful. Carolyn?
Illusion.
I would like to say one thing to Jeanette. You're so good with props. I will never forget a composition you did for Nikolai, Henry Street Playhouse with fruit.
oh yeah.
You remember you had fruit? What was the theme? I can't remember. It's still in my mind. Seeing you, you had apples and oranges and bananas.
I had my armpit and under my, yeah.
It was what was the theme? Was it time or I think it was shape.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember. I remember though doing it. I remember going and seeing a lemon at the grocer and saying, my God, this is so beautiful. And then I got the idea from that.
But you had fruit all over yourself in color. And
Well,
I
they
remember
were all hidden.
you like crazy.
But you know what? This dance, now that I look at it in this context, it's just like, remember the chair dance, the chair and desk dance where I was sliding down. It's like that.
Yeah.
Well, with all of them, you always created illusions that
Yeah.
were just magical. And so you could just dive into whatever the illusion was that you were
Yeah.
creating. Yeah, beautiful.
Tandy, let's take a look at you have collaborated with vocalist Bobby McFerrin and Sovo So, an a cappella vocal band, Frank Zappa. You were artistic director of the Moscow Circus in Japan for 2 years. And of course, Tandy, Beal and Company has been active for decades. So let's take a look
And my biggest collaborator, John Scoville.
John Scoville. So now let's see a section of Here After Here, a self-guided tour of eternity.
You know, all that talk about the light and stuff, when you die, you see the light. What that is actually your spirit taking a picture of you, and you're not sure, you're still confused whether you're in your body, your spirit, or human, so your eyes are still like...
Oops, something's funny with the sound.
When I die, if I die, I will go back to the dust that I came from.
I know exactly what's going to happen. My spirit, if I have a spirit, will leave my body. I will go into the grave, either cremated, probably cremated. And my spirit will dissipate, or it will soar up into the universe.
death draws greater scrutiny because when it comes to dying, and here the numbers are convincing, everybody's doing it.
The road that men pass over, my body makes no more, but sings on.
I don't think there is a transformation. I think that's it. 6 feet under, no future.
Oh my gosh, all of these people, all of these dances just make me cry. They're so beautiful. Tandy, you have spoken word, you have dancing. Just a little bit how you put this together.
Well, I think that theater is my home, and dance became the tool for me to get there. So talking with John, we'd lost a lot of people, like everybody of a certain age. And we came up with this idea about just wanting to bring people to the thoughtfulness about dying before it's a crisis. But everybody's frightened of it, so you can't talk about that. But if you ask people, well, what do you think happens after we die? That becomes, they jump into the imagination. And then, of course, you're going to start talking about death after that. So I started with that as an idea. And then, I did a lot of research. I interviewed 500 people, street people, kids. I didn't want it about what I think happens, but I wanted to get this panoply of what our collective imagination thought about it. And the research on it was just really fabulous. I think on here is somebody who is actually a trained MD and was living in our house. And I had these ideas, and unfortunately my scenic and lighting designer had died, and I had these ideas and I couldn't process them. And Steve Walter went, okay, I can make this 3-story thing for you. So that was amazing. John, in the collaborating with John, it's been so many years that we've worked together that we often work simultaneously. When we were younger, we always wanted to be the first one who could get the image out and the other one had to respond. And then as we get older, you want to see how somebody else shapes your mind and your mentality. So yeah, I mean, there were things from the research that I knew had to happen, like everything about afterlife is always up and down. It doesn't matter what the culture, there's a whole lot of that. And so there's that figure that's up there. She starts in white and the fans blowing on her. And eventually she changes to a red dress, but you never see when she does it. But how do you have somebody way up? How do you get the levels? So there were 3 rooms, and I actually worked with a videographer who worked with a guy who developed or discovered dark matter. So there was a lot of astonishing galactic images come from them.
Wow. Well, oh, we're at the end of our time, but oh my goodness. Merci beaucoup, Carolyn. Merci mille fois, Jeanette. And merci infiniment, Tandy. But please, everyone, stay with us. Janice Brenner has been monitoring the chat window and has selected some questions or comments to share with you. So thank you, you gorgeous, wonderful, creative women. I'm just astounded, and I'm in tears. I'm in tears. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, hello, everyone. I have a little bit of a cold, but I'm still with you. And before, if you want to enter any question into the chat to either one of the three women or all, please do that at this time. I just wanted to, yeah, I've been monitoring the chat, and one of the last things somebody said, Susie Kreitz wrote into the chat, "I wish I had danced with all of you."
Well, come to France. I'm still working.
Okay, yes. That's good to know, because I actually did tell some students that your company is going full force, and as Tandy as well. So yes, that's important, and that's part of what we're trying to do here as well. And
Janet?
before, yes?
Can I say something to Carolyn?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I-
Susie, go ahead.
Okay, this is Susie Kreitz here. You probably
Hello.
you probably do not remember me, but I took your improv class every Tuesday night. I would take the train, an hour and a half train ride from Trenton, New Jersey, just to take your class up in New York. I would go back down, and my roommate would pick me up at midnight at this
Wow.
horrible train station in her black Beetle.
I remember that. That was that wasn't the Henry Street Playhouse. It was the big
Right.
class started at 7 and it went on till 10. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Well,
And,
bravo. Yeah.
So I used a bunch of your stuff. Thank you. And
Okay.
Jeanette, I just want to say one thing. I was in a group piece of Emery Herman's,
Oh,
and you watched us once, and you said to Emery, "They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing." And it's true. We did not know what we were doing. And you told us to all go to the cloisters, and then we would know what the dance was about. So I went to the
oh
cloisters.
my goodness.
And then Tandy, you were always like this, hearing about, oh, Tandy Beals. Ooh, Tandy Beals. You know, you were like this person I would hear about. So then I finally met you during a reunion, and I used your husband's, one of his recordings. I used it for a 50-minute improv performance in a swimming pool.
Oh.
And it turned out to be profound. It wasn't just haha swimming pool. It was like people were in tears. So thank you. I just want to thank, I'm sorry, I just had to say
Thank you. Thank you, Susie. I need to break in because we have a special moment prepared, and that is that Phyllis Lamhut, who is here in the square with Robert, would like to say hello and to offer her words. Hi, Phyllis.
Hi. I want to say only one thing. It is wonderful to see creativity and talent continue from head to toe through all of your years. And I ask you to double your time and go from head to a new creation above and continue your wonderful work. And as women who are understated in this world, I find that aging is a privilege because it is not lauded in any art form. It's usually accepted, which is different than coming above ground and above the clouds and above the sky for creativity with stars, sun and moon, and no negativity. And I appreciate your clarity and your creativity. And of course, we had a lot of fun together, didn't we? Which my comedic self thought about in all the seriousness of creativity. And we were all blessed to have Nick and Murray. I danced with Nick for 20 years, and I think for Murray, I would run from a man who never counted anything to a choreographer who counted. So for me, it was a relief. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the other one I was creative. So I thank you, and it's just terrific to see you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you,
Phyllis.
Mm,
Thank
bravo.
you, Phyllis. Yeah.
Well,
wonderful.
when we talk about Nick and Murray, it is Gladys and Joanne and
Yes.
Phyllis and so many of our teachers. It's a
Yeah.
lineage that we're part of, and the DNA is all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I would like to say thank you to Joanne Woodbury. Hello, Joanne, are you
Hi,
there?
dear.
My
Yeah.
I
God,
want to thank you.
all
I-
your classes. And you know, I was going to think about Park City. You said you have to go. And the first day with Nick, I was changed person. And you were right. I thank you.
Well, thank you, three lovely, incredible women for all you gave to me throughout all my life. And Phyllis, I'm a testament to growing older as a dancer and still sort of hanging around.
Yeah.
But thank you for all of you have given me. I can't tell you what it, oh, excuse me, what it did for my life. Thanks.
And thank you what you have given to us.
Us. Yeah. Thank you, thank you. Oh,
Thank you, Joanne, so much. I was noting a comment when we were all talking about scenario, and I wanted to just read what Beth Bagnold wrote. Beth, if you don't mind. She wrote, being in the company after Carolyn and Tandy, Nick remounted scenario on us. As Tandy said, it was an exhausting process to find the heart of these varied emotions. I took Tandy's spot in the grief section. It still is with me today. Beth, did you want to unmute and say anything? You're welcome to. If you're still there. You got to
I was very slow in getting that done. Thank you. I just, remembering so many things just because our company bumped up against Tandy and Carolyn. And I just, it was always a little bit of a challenge to see where the next version is going to come out of having danced these, because of course we were not compared so much, but used as a model, the dancers that went before us. And then we were able to take it into our own. But thank you so much. It was a wonderful, wonderful time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
I'd like to say one thing to Phyllis too. My eyes were always glued on, when I was in New York, on Phyllis and Murray. And Nikolai would give these wonderful, astounding philosophical tirades about time and space and in class. And my eyes were on Phyllis and Murray to see what they were going to do. I was always in the back of the line because I wanted to see them go first. So Phyllis, thank you. I didn't copy you, but I wanted to know how you did it.
But Jeanette, you're the one that had the most peculiar sensitivity to time. And I use the word peculiar because when you're young, that was the word. It's coming now that I'm old, I remember all my young words. And I remember in your loft, your very odd sense of humor that you had, the subtlety of timing in that was so incredible. And as one humorist to you, and I said, oh, Jeanette's not funny, but she's so funny. So I didn't understand that you could be quiet and funny.
You were the funniest, Phyllis. I loved you. I loved watching you. I loved it when you were funny with Murray too.
Junk dances.
Diverse performers. Oh my goodness.
That's true. That's true.
and that's another, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead.
Nick opened a door. Other traditions in quote unquote modern dance really poo-pooed humor, that it was something déclassé, and yet he opened the door to being able to work with humor, and that it was as elevated as a serious work.
Yeah.
Phyllis, you were
both Phyllis
progenitor.
Both Murray and Nick.
Gladys is right up above there.
Oh my God, Gladys.
Gladys.
Constant inspiration.
Yeah.
Still is.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go to a question from Trista, who danced in the company, in the combined company in the 90s. And this is for all of you. She wrote, "Thank you, ladies, for sharing of your time and talent today. What advice would you give to younger dancers who might be encountering improvisation for the first time?"
Follow your heart.
What?
Follow the problem with your heart. No. That's hard.
Jeanette?
I said, stay with it. Do it.
Yeah.
It's so important. So much can come out of that.
Somehow it's all about listening too. If I mean, I think that there's so much improv that's come out of contact, but it's never something I really want to watch. I want to see some of it being shaped in the tradition that we have. It really shaped it. So whatever that issue is around presence and the relationship to space, I think shifts how we improvise. But listening feels like the key.
Can I say one thing? The question, it depends what the problem is. If you just say improvise, I mean, but if I find the more specific the problem is, the deeper you go and you use not your mind thoughts, but your intuitions. So it depends on and what the problem is.
And almost sometimes the more limited it is. Like Nikolai, he would make it so limited and then so much could come out like that.
Right.
Yeah, I remember Nikolai said, do weight, but you have to be thin. I remember standing up like this, going back and forth. I mean, now that was specific, huh? And I would like to say one thing, Phyllis, you will like this. When we were doing compositional classes twice a week for Nikolai, I would bang on the Henry Street Playhouse at 8 o'clock in the morning. Betty Young was downstairs, you know, with her cigarette and her was a long holder. She says, "What are you doing here? It's 8 o'clock. And I said, "I have to work. I need the studio." She said, you can't come in. So I waited there and I said, "I have to do it." So she said, "Come back later." So I came the next day, 8 o'clock, same time. And Betty said, "Okay, you want the keys?"
Wow.
I was so
That's so
obstinate. I wanted to do my composition. And so finally, I don't think you girls were up then. I would be 8 o'clock working on my compositions in the studio, I remember.
Well, Jeanette and I know we spent hours of time before we get into class making something together.
Right.
You know, Betty Young, she needs a mention here. Betty was extraordinary. Betty once said one of the things that I've stayed with me my whole life. She took a drag on a cigarette and she said, "Tandy, what are we going to do with you? You have both feet firmly planted in midair."
Oh my gosh. She was so kind underneath and so tough on the surface, right?
It was so nice to meet her before, but she was great.
Yeah.
But I must say, not only cigarettes, but she had her whiskey bottle on the bottom floor. I love this lady.
Yes, she was a secretary. And
She was the secretary.
the manager of the Playhouse. And she was a technician as well.
She was great.
Let me go to Natasha Simon, who danced with Phyllis for many, many years and is part of our legacy group. As she wrote to Carolyn, Jeanette, and Tandy, "Did you ever show any of your work to Nick? And if so, what are some of the things he said?" Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, Tandy was in my work. I think Jeanette, when I worked with Emia Pucci, we got these towels, towels, and I did 2 shows for Nick, and I found this Dockstetter in the Canal Street, this electronic tape. Now my shows were like 40 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. And I remember doing one piece, I can't remember, it was with balloons. I did one with balloons and I don't all kinds of things. But that was the time when all the company, I don't know how many of you were with me. It was great. We could rehearse. And Nikolai said, "I think you will be a choreographer." just like that. I mean, I think he had a sense already because I was working with a large group of people. I think you too, Tandy.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I know. I did a solo show in New York once, and Murray came backstage. He brought Hanya, and Murray gave me this big hug, and it was, "You did it, doll," or whatever. And then there was one moment in one of the pieces where there was an illusion of me going from thin to fat, of getting wider and wider. And when I was performing it that night, I went, "You could get a little thicker, a little fatter." And I did. And I thought, Murray might be here. And Murray came back and he went, "Dom, when you got from that thin to the fat, that was great." And I went, "This is amazing." It's the illusion skills that he was so invested in with us in our class. And yeah, it was great. It's great.
With me, Murray was so supportive. I mean, I didn't even know I had an imagination until I was in his class.
Wow.
With Nick, I feel like he would tell someone else that it was good and never tell me. I remember Nick one time, he and Murray were walking outside the studio that I was working in after lunch, before we had improv and stuff. And I heard Nick say, "What is that in there? All that garbage all over the floor, the greasy paper from the hero, her stuff all over. What is this?" And Murray said, now Alwyn, this is her environment for her creativity." And I just walked by, never said more. So great.
Wow. Thank you, Jeanette, for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to read something that Mark Lawton wrote from France. Hello, Mark. About Joanne. Joanne came to teach in Angers in the late 1970s and again at CND in 2011. So wonderful. Thank you for all the patience and treasures you unveiled in us tough French dancers, meaning slightly reluctant to abstraction.
Thank you, Mark. They were great. They were great.
Chloe Schaefer has written a question. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom and stories. How has your training and teaching of improvisation shaped or impacted and supported your aging?
That's a good question.
It's such a great question. I'm going to think about that too. Thank you, Chloe.
I felt all along that as I was giving improvisation, it always had to do with what I was going through in some way. I mean, not that it was personal, they wouldn't know it, but and then I went along further and further with that.
Well, I don't, I work with a great company. I never think aging doesn't come in my mind. I always work with this kind of innocence, and we go back to Tandy's word of wonder. I mean, I work very much with poetry, and of course based on Nikolai's ideas. So improvisations, I love to see what other people can do more than what I can see. I have my own personal views, but working with improvisation with other people is amazing to me. It's like Juha, coming out with his old megaphone. I mean, this is his idea, a silent protest. I mean, my dancers are amazing with that. So they're my tools, and not only Nikolai's work, but my tools.
Tandy, did you want to? I think you'd have something to say about that.
I don't.
No? Okay.
I don't. I feel like the difficulty, the great thing is having the improvisational tool as you age is that you don't have to rely on your own physicality. The difficult thing for me being in a small town is there's a very limited pool of artists who you can draw upon and keep together. So I don't know. It's a bit of a struggle, just trying to keep the money flowing to keep people able to keep working.
Tandy, you're still in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, I am. Same house where you came and visited.
Firehouse? Wonderful. She's a firehouse in Santa Cruz.
I want to say to Jeanette, Jeanette, you have a response from Dudley Brooks, who was in the company after you. Dudley says, Jeanette, I remember Nick mentioning you in class, probably a few years after you were in the company, and complimenting you on how your lack of self-consciousness led to the creation of Alphabet.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Dudley, Dudley, did you want to say anything about that?
No, he was, I'm pretty sure he was working on getting us to not be self-conscious, you know, and that's what led him to say it. And I just remembered it seemed like a very nice tribute to you from him, obviously many years after it happened.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for offering that, Dudley. I think, Jeanette, that's something to hold on to.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, great.
Maybe a last question from Bridget Woolley. When you all choreograph, do you choreograph a story, or do you just like what you see? Where do you all go to find inspiration? Wow.
There's a lot of questions.
That's a big question. Maybe
Yeah.
just take any part of that you'd like. Or do you just see what you see?
I always start with an idea.
Yeah, me too.
I start with an idea and I write miles of poetry. I get photographs and paintings and get it all out. And I work quite a bit before I see the company.
Me too.
And, it's different with the solo, different work, but
images.
Yeah, images. I get all this. So I'm prepared before I meet the company. Then we go into improvisation. And then like Nikolai, I said, no, cut. No, I like this. So, and Tandy, you work the same with idea.
Yeah, ideas. And music. And music. I know that I feel very lucky that I get to hear a composer working every day, which if anybody wants a composer, he's a wonderful, wonderful person to work with as a dancer and has tons of music. And I'm not making as many things as I used to. So he's got more time.
And Jeanette, did you?
I start with an image, and sometimes it takes me a long time to get to even an image. And then I start working with people, you know, maybe with one person even, and start improvising and stuff. And then I kind of get to understand what it is, this image. If it's strong enough, then it comes out, it emerges as time goes on, as we work.
Wonderful. I mean, maybe along with the question before, Dudley also writes, all three of you seem to use older dancers in your work.
Yeah.
Right?
I use different
ages.
Young and old, yeah.
Yeah. So
for me, I wouldn't want those tango dancers in that. The video did something funny as we were watching it, but it's all these dates that just keep flying up one after the other, all these kind of dates. Somebody died on every one of those dates and somebody was born on those, but it had to be an older couple, had to. And somehow there's some place of the resonance. I remember when Murray was doing his last tour and he said, this is the last tour. And I went, this is ridiculous. It's so hard to take your eyes off you. You have so much resonance on the stage that you just want to see into him at aging, but it hurts more.
Yeah.
And Tandy, I just have an idea. I love your coffee cups back there. What are the teapots? Talk about shapes. I'm looking at your face, but can I have one of those? You know, it's strange that, you know, we're talking about Nikolai. Nikolai would love this. Talk about, I don't know, is that a collection of
the dancing pots. Somebody.
Okay, that's an idea, the dancing pots. Okay.
A good one.
So maybe just one more question from Donna Krasno. I found it. Yes?
We worked together once. Yeah.
Oh, great. I found improvisation essential when I started teaching children after years of teaching university and professional dancers. Have any of you worked with children?
I have a huge program going now called Art Smart. And it's just, I think the older I get, I don't have children by choice, but I think that I have to give back to a community and to open them up. In fact, I think, Carolyn, I saw you working with children once when we were doing that event in Aix-en-Montpellier.
Yeah.
And I went, oh yeah, working with children. I just think it's really important. Get that next generation alive and vital and sensitive and compassionate.
No, it's nice. When we tour, we have a program. There's 2 of my dancers who teach children the same time we tour.
Oh, that's great.
They're there usually the day before. So then they see the show. But it's amazing to work with children. I mean, I think when I was a child, even, being an elephant or a giraffe, I can still remember those classes. So it's important. Jeanette, do you teach children?
No, I'm not good at young children, but I've taught teenagers, which I really like. I really, really like that. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Peter. You're back. Thank you, everyone.
Oh my gosh, this is just so amazing, so inspiring on so many levels. I'm wondering if I can sneak in one last question, and maybe it'll be just like an opportunity for a brief gem of an idea to just drop into the world here. But as you think about working with children or with young people or the next generation, I mean, that's one of our big goals about these conversations, is to look back as a way to really help propel ideas forward into however other people might use them in the future, and sort of in the spirit of the way Nick and Murray encouraged us to really explore. If you could think of one concept from, let's call it the Nikolais Lewis philosophy, that you feel would be really exciting for a younger generation to dig into, any generation really, but especially young people looking at dance. What might that be? Something, some concept, some premise, some problem?
Well, for myself, we're working with children. They love shape. I mean, each child has to put another one in a shape, and they make faces and they do things. And another thing, children love motion. And in one of my classes, the children are great. They made a wash machine, jiggling, and the other children were improvising, and they were the clothes inside. I thought that was fantastic. And the children, if you tell them about motion, they come up with ideas unimaginable. So also, I must say, in France, it's great because I have a new project. I'm working less with the company, but I'm working with younger people in conservatoires and children to instill Nikolais' philosophy. The kids get it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm like Joan Woodbury. We're going to keep going to 100 years old.
Hey, honey, I'm already 94, so.
No.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Jeanette or Tandy?
Jeanette.
Well, what I thought of is what was so important to me was molecularness.
Mm.
And I think that's lacking in dancers.
What's that? What are you talking about, molecularism?
What am I talking about?
Yes.
Being part, I remember Murray used to teach it. I don't know if Nick did, of being made up of, I mean,
molecules, the moleculars. Yeah, in the body.
That you're nothing but molecules. I mean, I taught it that way. That Murray had it. That there's
I
nothing
never
but
had class
molecules.
so much. It was more. It was always Nick. Yeah. Okay. Molecular. Okay.
In other words, you're inside. You're a little like a little mind inside of just molecules, nothing else.
Oh,
It's
okay.
good
Okay.
for not ego. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
you have a
okay.
nice Latin molecule. Yeah.
That's nice.
Molecular energy, we call it. Yeah.
Tandy?
I think it's really difficult. I'm thinking about older people right now in the United States, that the information overload that we have is very difficult for people to be present. And I'm not sure how the route in for people occurs, but that is the deepest gift, I think, that all of my teachers, Gladys, Joanne, Phyllis, Murray, Nick, Carolyn, Jeanette, all of you brought forward that place of presence. And how do we listen? And how do we deal with the space around us? I think it's going to be tricky for the next generation being bombarded with, information.
No, it's very true what you say. That's why I did this thing about the meta universe. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know what's happening to our world. We're going to have real people. We're going to have people who are virtual. And I agree with Tandy, not only working with the young, but also working with the older people. I remember when Pina Bausch did this work Kontaktov with older people. I don't know if you saw, it was fantastic. So I think, Peter, not only the children, I think we can go to all ages.
You're so right. You're so right.
Go to rest homes. We can have people dance and they wake up and so reach out to everybody.
Well, that's a great note to finish on. Reach out to everybody. And I want to thank everybody for being here as guests to witness this incredible conversation. And I believe that Janice has dropped into the chat some website addresses for each of our panelists so that you can learn more about them. Please do check that out. Please also visit the nikolailewis.org website to learn more about the foundation if you would like. And importantly, these conversations, this is the second and what we hope will be an ongoing series of 3 to 4 conversations a year, but they are recorded. The first one that we did last fall, and then this one, and they will be posted there. The first one from last fall is already there, and this one will be posted as well so that you can share it with people who might not have been able to be here today, or so that you can go back and relive some of these beautiful moments in the conversation.
Peter, I'd also just want to say that you can also go directly to YouTube to see the video of the 3 originals.
Did you drop that link into the chat?
No, I don't have that, but you can go to the Nikolai Lewis website and get it, or you can just type in at YouTube, the originals, Nikolai, and it will come right up.
Thanks, Janice. And one last thing, I want to thank Robert for moderating. I want to thank Janice for moderating the Q&A. I want to thank behind the scenes my colleague at Trinity College, Phil Duffy, for helping to keep things running. I want to thank Trinity for helping to host this platform. And of course, the Nikolais Legacy Group for continuing to support this legacy in any manner of ways that we can. And of course, Tito, for your ongoing stalwart efforts in that regard. Most especially, I want to thank the 3 of you, Carolyn, Jeanette, and Tandy, for sharing with us just the brilliance, the ongoingness, the generosity of your journeys. And I know that I feel incredibly grateful to be a part of this long lineage, and it's wonderful to learn from you. So thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to bid everyone adieu. Please enjoy yourselves. Let these beautiful ideas live with you. Thank you, everybody.